Hi, it's Nicole McGuirk for twopeasinthebucket.com with this month's scrapbook stamping. And this month we're focusing on using woodblock stamps for your layouts. The first thing I'm going to do is quickly go over what I'm going to be using. I'm using these photos from my oldest son's preschool days, working on his school album. And then I've chosen some papers from October Afternoon, both their report card and schoolhouse collections. They coordinate really nicely together. So I've got a red, a gray, a little scrap of yellow from Studio Calico, a yellow stripe from October Afternoon. This navy paper with the polka dots and the grid is from the new My Mind's Eye Lush 2 collection. And then a couple of distressed solids from Echo Park. The cream is from For the Record and the navy is from the Little Boy collection. And you can see I kind of sketched out what I wanted to do. I had a couple of options there. I'm going to use this woodblock stamp from Hero Arts that is called It's a Parade, and I'm going to color it in with a few memento markers. Then I'm going to add a stamped embellishment on the bottom portion of the page with the plaid person stamp, also from Hero Arts. So I'm going to set my things aside and just kind of try to figure out my placement before I actually cut anything or stamp anything. I always kind of like to lay everything out and see if I like how it looks before I cut up an entire sheet of paper and then realize that I have done it wrong. And this is looking more like what the completed project's going to look like, but it just isn't quite enough color. I think it really needs to be more primary and bright, especially for a school page. So I will make a few minor adjustments as I go along. But this is the basic design of the page. For the stamping, this is the Stamp-A-Majig, and in my opinion, it is my most useful tool for woodblock stamps. So what I'm going to do is just ink up my stamp that I'm going to be creating my border with. It doesn't matter what ink, I just wanted something I could see well, so I'm using, I think, a gray ink that was on my desktop. I had cut my strip to about 1¼ inch wide by 12 inches long. I'm going to adjust that to see if I like how that looks, and then I'm just going to take a baby wipe and clean up my stamp, because I'm not going to be stamping my border in gray. I have used this stamp before and created a border using a solid color of ink. It's adorable, but where I'm trying to infuse a little bit more color into my design, I want to color in each of these little children with a different color of marker. So I'm using a gray, a darker blue, a red, and a yellow. And I'm just going to carefully color in all of the images using the brush tip of these memento markers. I am using memento markers, but there are new markers in, Two Peas doesn't have these, I don't believe, but they do have some new markers in the store that would be perfect for these. I will be getting mine soon, and I will be sharing ideas on using those as the class goes along this year. So there's several options. There's all kinds of markers that work for this. I know Stampin' Up! Sells markers that are great for coloring on your stamps. And then stamping, you just want to make sure you're using a marker that is for coloring on your stamps and then stamping. They're specially formulated to stay wet longer and whatnot, so that they work for this kind of technique. For example, Copic markers will not work for this. So I'm coloring in, I'm finishing up now with my last color, just kind of quickly going over these. It is a tiny bit more time consuming, but I promise the end result is worth it. Okay, I'm going to take that clear sheet for the Stamp-A-Majig, take the T-square ruler that comes with it, I've lined it up, and then I'm going to line my stamp up right in that corner and stamp it. And there you can see my first impression. Now I'm going to speed up the video quite a bit so you don't have to watch the boring coloring too long, but I do want to show how I continue to make that border. So I'm just quickly coloring in the stamp again, pardon, and I'm going to line up my plastic sheet, my T-square, and stamp it again. And you can see that creates a perfectly straight image. The Stamp-A-Majig is just an invaluable tool when you want to line up your stamped images or stamp them straight on your project. Again, same thing on the other side. I did start in the center and work my way out. I do that a lot. And you might have noticed with my first stamped impression it was a little bit lighter. I had just cleaned my stamp and maybe it wasn't all the way dry. So I am going to recolor and stamp that again. And I stamped right over my first stamping. I didn't redo that strip. And you can see that it was perfectly aligned. I didn't have to redo anything, and it really brightened up that first stamping so that it coordinates better with the rest of the stamped strip. Just going to color in a couple of the images there on the end and go ahead and finish the strip by stamping a little bit on each end so that it looks more like a pattern paper strip. You're kind of creating your own. Line him up. Use the T-square. The Stamp-A-Majig in the two-piece store does have a little bit different color. Depending on who these are packaged for, I think they come in different colors, but they all are the same. I know someone told me once they didn't know that that plastic sheet was for the Stamp-A-Majig and they threw it away. So make sure that you keep both pieces because they work together so that you can stamp your images exactly where you want them. With your woodblock stamps work great for this. I also use it for my cling stamps that I might not know exactly where those are going to stamp, or unmounted red rubber stamps. You can mount them on your clear block and using the same technique, line them up there with the corner of the T-square and stamp them. So I'm just finishing up my strip, and there you can see it. And so I have a nice bright primary strip that looks great for school pages. Works for so many different things. The next thing I'm going to stamp, is a embellishment circle. So I'm just going to punch a circle here. This is a 3-inch circle from some yellow pattern paper. It was just a scrap of paper I had left over. This is a Studio Calico pattern. And again, just going to wipe that off. It will eventually fade. I should have probably wiped it off a little bit sooner. Have to scrub it off a little bit later with some stamp cleaner. A lot of times that doesn't bother me though, so I just leave it. I'm going to ink up my plaid person stamp from Hero Arts and stamp that on the clear sheet for the Stamp-A-Majig. Then I'm going to line it up with my T-square ruler, re-ink up that plaid person, and stamp him right there in the center of my circle. And again, you can see I got him stamped exactly where I wanted him. He's not skewed or anything like that. So I use my Stamp-A-Majig all the time because I really don't like to have to keep stamping something. Now I'm going to take a sheet of vellum and I'm going to trim a thin strip from it and complete the embellishing of this little circle design. I work with rub-ons. I usually cut them out of the sheet just because I don't want to ruin any of the other rub-ons or accidentally transfer any of the other rub-ons to my project. So I cut this strip in half and I'm just creating a little text on the vellum to overlay on my circle. Then I'm going to use one of these apple rub-ons, which I didn't cut from my sheet. I guess I was feeling kind of on the edge there. And applied that rub-on right to my stamped image. Just going to trim my vellum, and you can see that'll be a really cute overlay for my page. Now I'm simply going to put all of the elements together, and I've already pre-cut my papers. The dimensions will be in the PDF handout at 2Ps. Didn't quite get that right, but I just reapplied that. And I did end up cutting a couple of white mats for my smaller photos just to help them pop off that bright background. And this is the paper I switched out. I was going to use that yellow and navy and white or cream stripe, but it just didn't add enough color for my page, so I switched it out with this other October afternoon striped paper. Applying some paper strips, going to cut off the tab at the bottom there, trim off any excess. I punched a couple of half circles and I'm applying them on each side. This is a technique I have shown before in my from start to finish videos and in other layouts that I've had in the 2Ps gallery. I really like it. I think it helps finish off a border. I am layering some circles there for my plaid person that I stamped, and I attached that vellum with the tiny attacher so there's no adhesive to be seen. Punched a couple of smaller half circles to layer on top. My title was die cut with the silhouette, and I did die cut it twice like I often do, once out of dark gray and once out of navy, and it's not a huge contrast rather, but I really think that does help make the title more prominent on the page. Now I'm just doing the finishing work, adding a few stickers, one with the date, this cute little 7 Gypsies tag that says my class. I'm going to attach it with the tiny attacher. And then I printed just a little bit of journaling. I didn't really need a lot on an October afternoon's label sticker, and then I added a rub-on to finish off the journaling tab. And I have a couple of Stampin' Up! Buttons that I'm going to sew on with some baker's twine. And I originally thought I'd do bows, but then I thought I didn't really like that, so I snipped those off and I ended up just sewing them on regularly and tying them off in the back. The last thing I did was add a couple of little heart brads and one more button to the journaling tag or sticker there to finish the page. For more information on this layout and the scrapbook stamping class, please visit 2psinabucket.com on March 1st, 2011. Thanks for watching.